How do we help horses thrive? We tackle problems using science. Plus, our love of horses keeps us working until we get it right. Even with our most established feeds, we keep innovating. Even when it takes years of research, there is always more to learn. Our PhDs are dedicated to the scientific method, but it can't capture the feeling of seeing a horse reach their full potential. It takes science and love, each pulling its weight, to help your horse live their best life.
The American Horse Council's Recreation Trails and Land Use Committee met on Tuesday, June the 7th. This committee is chaired by Jean Ligon of the Michigan State Horse Council and includes a number of other organizations in this space: American Endurance Ride Conference, Backcountry Horsemen of America, other state horse councils, and the Equine Land Conservation Resource. The charter of this committee is to monitor legislation that may impact access and quality of trails, protect and preserve open space, conservation, recreation, and multipurpose public lands. They identify and prioritize concerns and opportunities, evaluate related information, and determine actions or activities that may be appropriate in order to make recommendations to the AHC Board of Trustees. Our chairwoman kicked us off and welcomed everyone with a few opening remarks, and we approved the minutes of their last meeting. We were very pleased to have a guest presentation from Jess Turner. Jess Turner is the first president of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. This is America's leading coalition of outdoor recreation trade associations and organizations. ORR is really dedicated to connecting all segments of the outdoor recreation economy to pass historical legislation like the Great American Outdoors Act and to achieve funding for public lands, waters, and rural gateway communities. She has a wealth of experience, including time in the White House and at the Department of Interior and Capitol Hill and state recreations offices across the country and outdoor lifestyle businesses. So we were delighted to have Jess join us and share what is the mission of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable and what are some of the work and the programs that they are involved with at this time. Jess then stayed with us after her presentation to hear some of the issues that the Recreation Trails and Land Use Committee is tackling. So let's get into those. So the first issue that we had a robust conversation around was looking at the use of e-bikes, electronic bikes, on multi-use trails. Now, e-bikes are allowed to be on non-motorized trails, which often creates a little bit of a conflict with others, such as horseback riders on those trails. E-bikes can go up to 35 miles an hour, and they're quite quiet when they are at high rates of speed. So they're easy to suddenly encounter on a trail when you're riding your horse. The Backcountry Horsemen of America and the American Horse Council have put together an incident report, and we are asking the equine industry through all of our various connections and partnerships to circulate this incident report and ask people, if you have an encounter with an e-bike on a trail, to please fill out that report and provide us, if possible, with photos. This data will then be analyzed and help us to determine how we can develop solutions and recreate responsibly. For example, proper etiquette on trails and courtesy and other safeguards to ensure that all users on multi-use trails have a positive experience. So we look for that incident report on the Backcountry Horsemen of America's website, and it will soon be on the American Horse Council's website. We next got an update from the AHC staff regarding the interest in developing a National Horse Trails Directory. There was a directory of this nature put together many years ago by another organization. It has since become a little outdated, and so we are researching whether or not we can revive that directory and put it together and make it very inclusive. So look for more information about that probably in the next few months. Next, we had a brief conversation about some challenges that we've also been facing with livestock or horse campsites. During the pandemic, everybody wanted to get out and recreate, which was great, but it meant that there were a lot of campers and RVers who were going to state or national parks with their equipment, and they were setting up camp in sites that were designated for livestock or horse camp use. This caused some of our equestrians to arrive at the facilities and not find an appropriate or suitable space that they could use, or they might get a space and next door to them would be someone who was not an equestrian and not accustomed to being around horses, which raised some safety concerns. So a very robust conversation again was had about this. We have worked closely with the U.S. Forest Service, and they have put together a white paper looking into this matter and offering suggestions to the land use managers and the park superintendents. That's out on our website also. We have also developed an incident report, again, similar to the one we did for e-bikes, asking people to report incidents where they could not get a campsite because it was full with non-equestrian users, or where they did get a site and they had some kind of concern about who their neighbors were who might not be accustomed to being around horses. So please be aware of that. We're working on both of those matters. We're very excited that the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, ORR, has been also taking a look at how to improve trails with some of the funding we got from the Great American Outdoors Act. And that includes amenities in the parks, such as camping spaces. So we are working very closely with them on both of these items. We also had a brief update on the U.S. Senate's consideration of an omnibus public lands package, which would include biking on long distance trails, or the BOLT, B-O-L-T, BOLT Act. The legislation would require the Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture to develop long distance bike trails on federal lands. And the concern was that the current language may not prohibit them from taking current equestrian trails and converting them to long distance bike trails. So Backcountry Horsemen of America and the American Horse Council have been working to have some new language inserted in that, which will ensure that we have some protections from that. So that was the committee meeting that we had. We did go into closed session and conferred on a number of items to see if we wanted to make some recommendations to the Board of Trustees. But at this time, there were no recommendations made. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that we are going to record this. So Emily and I both have mics on, and hopefully as we do the panel, we'll be passing out the mic over there as well. So we have only 2 hours to cram a whole ton of really good information in. So I'm going to try to go through as quickly as I can. To save time, what we did do is have our exec meeting virtually this year, but I promise we will be, oh, thank you, Em. I promise we will be having an in-person exec meeting next year. Also, to save time, what we did was on your tables, you'll see a pamphlet, and that's going to have all of our speakers' bios today, as well as information about each of their respective organizations. So as we're going through today, feel free to take the time to look through those, familiarize yourself with our speakers, and if you have any questions at the end, we will do a Q&A. So first and foremost, I wanted to go into a little bit about what we've been doing for UHC in 2022. Obviously, the highlight for us and our pride and joy is the UHC Equine Resource Database. We call it UHC ERD, or USERD for short. And it's actually come a long way since 2019. So I remember 3 years ago speaking to you about this concept we had in our head about this searchable online database. And to see where it is today is just, it's really amazing to me. So to give a quick overview for those of you who are not familiar with the USERD and what we've been working on there. It is a free online searchable database of over 1,200 rescues and sanctuaries nationally that we've identified that help to care for at-risk horses and those that are in transition. Included in this database are also things like assistance programs, safety net resources. So you've got hay banks in there, feed banks, castration services. We've got euthanasia and disposal, options and things like that. So if an owner comes to the site and they need help finding one of those resources, we will point them in the right direction. This database, we feel it's so vital to the industry because we believe very strongly that the most impact that we can have for these at-risk horses is to start at the source of the problem, and that's with the owners. So if we can help the owners find responsible options and resources to help them, hopefully we can prevent these horses from becoming at risk or put in a situation where they become at risk in the first place. Just make sure I touched on all the points I wanted to touch on with this. So this year, we're actually going to be focusing on doing some marketing for the UHC database, because if nobody knows about this database, we really can't help anybody. So we're also relying on our industry partners and everybody in this room to really get the word out about the UHC Equine Resource Database and let your members, your friends and family, everybody know that this exists and they can go here if they need help. Make sure I'm on the right. Okay, this is just a quick example of the results. So when an owner comes to the site and they say they click in that they want a hay and feed resource, so they'll put in hay and feed as their selection, whatever state they reside in, and the database will populate with these results. They can also search for things like if they want a breed-specific rescue or sanctuary, they can search for things like thoroughbred, they can search for standardbred, and we'll populate the results with those types of facilities. We also have affiliations. So if an owner is looking for a facility that is accredited with GFAS or STA or TAA, they can find that through this site as well. Same thing with partnerships. So if they would like to find a facility that is partnered with the ASPCA, TCA, anything like that, they can find it through the database. And the reason that I wanted to show you this slide is because we are actually going to be getting a significant upgrade for the database this year. So after we're finished with this conference, Emily and I are going to be jumping into onboarding with a software. It's actually an association management software called MemberClicks. So right now we're using a CRM called Insightly, and unfortunately we have outgrown that for various reasons. So we felt it was time for us to have an upgrade for the database. This is just an example of what it could look like. There's a lot of play there for us, so we can sort of dictate what we want to show on the interface on the front end for owners and what we want them to see as far as the organizations. The nice thing about this software is that users or organizations that are putting information into our database can actually create a member profile, so they can go in on their end, update their address, update their phone number, and that takes a little bit of the work off of me, so I'm not constantly changing that, and saves a lot of hours on my end. The other nice thing about this software is that it allows us to do a lot more integration. It allows us to do a lot more automation, which is, again, going to free up a lot of my hours to do things that are a little bit more important than that. So we're excited. This if the onboarding goes well, this should go live in August. Fingers crossed for us. The next thing that we were excited about, this actually was a presentation that Emily and I had given at Equine Affair last year in November 2021. And what we wanted to do was to create a presentation that is directed at owners And we originally gave this at Equine Affair, but we also gave it during the National Animal Control Association's board meeting 2 months ago. And it was very popular, so we felt that, well, we'll take it a step further, and we actually created a recording of this presentation. So we wanted to put it up on our website, share it on our social media, make sure that everybody knew about it. And the importance behind this presentation was to try and get horse owners thinking about what happens to your horse if something were to happen to you. So if you lost your job today, if something, God forbid, happened to your health, what's going to happen to your horse? And one of the things that we wanted to get owners thinking about is setting their horse up for success through making sure that their horse has basic training, that their veterinary needs are being met, that they've thought about responsible options for their horse if they can no longer keep them. One of the topics we talk about as well in this presentation is estate planning. So we actually go into pretty good detail about estate planning. And the great thing about this is that for Emily and I, one of the big impacts for us is that we actually were able to weave into the data coming out of the Equine Welfare Data Collective Report into this presentation. And it sort of gave owners an idea of why these horses are ending up at risk according to the data that we've collected. And just to give you some perspective on the importance of this recording, in our latest EWDC report, 77% of equines entering the custody of EWDC participants, so these are people that have completed the EWDC survey, came from a combination of both owner surrenders and law enforcement confiscations, with owner finances being the #1 reason why these horses are ending up in rescues and shelters, according to the data that we have from EWDC, and owner health being the second highest reason. So clearly, starting at the source is so important for us, and that again is the owners. It was the first time, again, that Emily and I were able to weave this data into that story and make it relatable to horse owners. But also, it was sort of a culmination of why we're doing what we're doing at UHC and why it's so important to the industry. So starting upstream of why these horses are ending up at risk and in rescues, and the source starts with owners and helping them to be responsible for the horses in their care. I just want to also mention this recording is available on our website, and if any of your organizations would like us to present it, we're more than happy to do so. The last thing I want to touch upon is UHC, we're still running our microchip giveaway. These chips are free, so the only thing that people need to do is go to the website, fill out the form, and we will mail them chips. It's 2 chips per owner and 5 chips per rescue and sanctuary. We still have plenty of supply, so please share the heck out of this with your members. The other thing that we are doing right now is a benefit raffle. You will see information about this raffle on your tables. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we have not sold a lot of tickets, so your chances of winning are pretty high. So definitely support a great cause. Sign up for the raffle. We'd very much appreciate it.
It's been donated by White Stallion.
Yes.
So we would love to show White Stallion that the industry supports it.
Yes.
Where is White Stallion?
Arizona.
Out by Tucson, I think. I have to look at it.
Ashley, do you have tickets available here, or do you have to buy them online?
Buy them online, and we can.
Yep.
If anybody doesn't want to do it on their phone, we're at the ready to help you.
Yes, I will put your information in the computer for you. Also, I think it goes without saying, if you are part of an organization that is not already supporting the UHC, please jump on board with us. We could definitely use the support. As Julie mentioned, we're run by a staff of 1 on a shoestring budget, and we accomplish so much for the industry, so please support us. With that, let me check on the timing here. I think, I'm doing good. Okay. I'm going to introduce Carly Barrick, who is a part of A Home for Every Horse, and we are partnered with them with the Equine Network on this project. So I am going to try to squish myself in a corner.
I'm gonna get out of the
Nope,
way.
you're fine.
This will just move your slide. You've got the mic okay?
Yep,
All right.
I think. Perfect. And I know we're pressed for time, so I can make this super, super fast. But us over at A Home for Every Horse, short and sweet, we are a rescue resource brand. So we're, connecting people like or organizations like UHC with rescues in need, and we couldn't do it without the UHC. So thank you. That's basically what we are here to say. So just bridging the gap, essentially. You can go to the next slide. So we have been an organization for 10 years. So last year, just at a glance, we contributed more than 12,000 feed coupons to rescues, more than 300 horses were blanketed, and just over 1,000 horses adopted from our Home for Every Horse organizations. And that's about our average on a yearly rate. And new this year, we know COVID was really tough, so we're doing 10 in-person visits to rescues to volunteer and give back and kind of just spread the awareness of what us and the UHC do together. And also just adding some giveaways. So that's kind of where our marketing comes in, just trying to, really spread awareness across the industry in new and unique, fun ways. Next. So here's just our over the past 10 years numbers. So in December, we just hit our 10,000 horses adopted mark, over 1,500 tons of feed donated, and over 1,200 blankets donated. So just really, really cool things we're doing, and we couldn't do it without the UHC. And also just connecting these rescues with resources that the UHC offers is super, super valuable. So, this partnership, we could not do it without you guys, and that's basically what we would like to get across. So next slide. And we'll just finish this up just with one of our most recent donations that we did, and it's just a little testimonial you guys can read, but essentially she's just saying, we couldn't do, we wouldn't have these connections without A Home for Every Horse, and we wouldn't be able to do it without UHC. So that's short and sweet version, and I just wanted to say thank you and just give you a shout out, and we're happy to be here.
Really.
So
it's just to add to that, it's really, I know I don't have the mic on, it's really great to see, we get Julie and I know Dave and Purina gets these wonderful testimonials from the rescues about what they use the coupons on. So some of them use it directly to help the owners that are in need with the feed. Some of it use it for their rescue horses. So it's just such a great partnership, and to see the direct effect it has on the rescues is just heartwarming to get these replies from them. So keep up the good work.
well, thank you. I won't slow us down anymore.
Steal your mic back. And we're going to hand it over to Emily Stearns, my partner in crime. Make sure my mic is still working.
Ashley and I joke that we are a team pair at this point, because there's no point in talking about the data unless we talk about how it's affecting and helping horse owners and how it's being applied. So what's new, just kind of a brief rundown of what's new. We did publish a fourth report in February. All of our reports can be seen on the website, and I'll show you a little screen cap of that in a second. There is, if anybody just wants to see what the reports look like, a printed copy out by the registration desk, and then I think we have the one-pagers out there too. We did a little one-page infographic as well, just some basics, and it shows you where you can go find some of the rest of the data. We've been working with the UHC, like Ashley said, on some new CRM, and it's one of those things where it sounds like a convenience thing, but for us, we are actually pulling data out of that as well. That's how we kind of figure out how many rescues there are, how many sanctuaries there are, where they're located. We do stuff like compare it to, regional density population. In report 3, we talked about regional economic impact and things like that, and kind of show comparative. The density of rescues compared to regional need in terms of financial issues. We also have been working on educational opportunities, like Ashley said, and I'm going to focus on that a little bit. And we've been doing a lot of collaboration, and I'm stumping this because we want to be doing more collaboration. So if you're out there and you're thinking this data is really important, and you want help talking about it and you want us to help talk about it, we are more than happy to. Like Ashley, like the USC, it's just me. So if you email us, you're going to get me, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. I'm happy to talk on the phone about it. Ashley and I don't really get tired of talking about our program, so you might have to cut us off at a certain point. But it is something we are really passionate about and that we feel is really, really important. We're also working on data visualization, so as you start to see some of the infographics we're doing and the reporting process, we're going to start getting involved in a little bit of more sophisticated data visualization software. We also have an internship program where we get interns interested in data analysis come on and help kind of come up with creative ways to help visualize the data as well. All this is kind of part of our evolving strategic plan. So again, we're working on collaboration, we're working on expanding these educational opportunities and outreach. The data doesn't matter if nobody knows it exists. And helping people understand what it all means. And this is kind of what Ashley and I have been talking about with the presentations and our webinar recordings is someone coming from college like myself who hated statistics and thought it was really stupid and boring, and I'd much rather be in the barn petting the ponies. Yes, agree. I never wanted anything to do with statistics in my entire life, and then here we are. So it is really important, and it's really important that we make it palatable for horse people like us who, again, would rather be petting the literal pony I have in my backyard. So talking about helping people understand what it all means, and this talks about increasing participation and communication and all that stuff, but it's really focused on discussing, oh, Ashley, what have I done?
You know what it was? It's just the title thing. Do you need to come back?
I got it. All about discussing the data with impact and asking ourselves, great, so if we tell you 77% of horses are coming from owner surrenders and law enforcement confiscation, why does that matter? We did a webinar recently, kind of comparative to small animal statistics. So this is why it matters, because programs, really impactful programs in the small animal world have focused on spay and neuter. Small animals, dogs, cats, companion animals, 50% of those animals are coming in as strays when you look at data from PetPoint and the ASPCA and Best Friends. So spay and neuter programs are really impactful when 50% of animals are coming in from kind of feral breeding off the street and stray breeding off the street. But if we have 77% of horses coming directly from owners, that's not a stray animal problem. That's not a problem spay neuter is going to solve. So how do we solve that problem, and how do we prevent the horses from needing to come into shelters? Through responsible ownership. So if we know owner finances are the #1 reported issue, gee whiz, maybe throwing hay assistance and feed assistance and medical assistance are going to help prevent horses from needing to come into the shelter. So these talks, that's Ashley and us at Equine Affair in November. We're planning, I think, on, we have Right Horse Summit in September in Denver. I didn't just imagine that, right? We have Equine Affair in Ohio. This will be our first trip out to Equine Affair in Ohio next year. We have Equine Affair in November, again, in Springfield. So again, getting the information out there. We've been kind of waxing poetic about this talk we gave at Equine Affair. It was well attended. You know, we had a tough slot, 10 a.m. Sunday morning, again, Friday morning.
Even worse.
I guess like that turned into a 4-day whirlwind. It's really the first time we've been able to talk about the data in kind of a conversational manner, and people were extremely excited about it, which is, you know, you never really anticipate people being excited about numbers and math. But it really kind of had meaning to them and is starting to make sense. So this is the direction we're heading as we continue to collect and report and getting these conversations going. And I mentioned that small animal comparative stat webinar. So we recorded that. It's called Love to the Rescue. All of our recorded webinars and stats are listed on the United Horse Coalition website. So if you go to the website under recordings and webinars, they are all there. And then if you want to see any of the reports, if you go to the United Horse Coalition website and go to the subsection, the Equine Welfare Data Collective, you can click and see all the reports. We are currently working on kind of a 5-page summary to have like a PDF handout that's going to take, at this point we have almost 350 pages of reports and data, so we're going to try to condense that down into, you know, a nice candy bar snack size of data and reporting, something that's shareable and easy to hand out. So look forward to that. Definitely reach out if you are interested in, I mean, many of our panelists today, so ASPCA and GFAS both require their participants to participate in the Equine Welfare Data Collective. So that is a really great way for us to get participants and get data, and we're just always looking for ways to expand our reach and expand participant encouragement.
Ask yourself a question. What would I love? This is your time. This is your moment. Life is calling out to you. Every day, get up and do what you love, and love what you do. Embrace the world. Enjoy the journey. Live your best life. Follow your passion, because no one can do it for you. See Jarvis Insurance, protecting your passion so you can live your dream.
Good afternoon. We had a well-attended Equine Welfare Committee meeting on June 5th. We began the meeting with introductions by our chair, Dr. Tom Lenz, followed by legislative updates provided by myself, Cliff Williamson. That included updates on the SAFE Act, the PAST Act, and a recent USDA animal care meeting with stakeholders in Riverdale, Maryland. Specifically within that meeting included updates on the USDA's HPA rule and its progress, which includes an expected 2022 release date. Whether that be fiscal year or calendar year, we still don't know. Also included was a video presentation by Dr. Chris Heine on improving equine welfare through recognition of effective state. That presentation will be following this presentation in today's schedule. So I won't spoil anything for you, but I will note that it was very well received during the committee meeting and hopefully will be the basis of future conversations moving forward, most notably including social licensure and some of the research that Dr. Heine has referenced in her presentation. Following that video presentation, we also received organizational updates from committee members. Many of the organizations present provided updates, including updates from the Jockey Club on their welfare and safety of the Racehorse Summit, an update on the equine injury database statistics, and the fact that number is continuing to fall, an update on Grayson Jockey Club Research Foundation efforts and priorities. She also provided an update on the Thoroughbred Incentive Program and Aftercare Alliance. The AQHA provided an update on the task force developed to investigate abusive training practice enforcement, and that AQHA racing labs are now having monthly calls. The PRCA provided an update attributing to raising awareness of the low injury numbers that they have. It was an incredibly low number, and they are continuing to monitor that and take action as the injuries that are reported are confined to relatively few aspects of PRCA's sport portfolio, and there was some very interesting research that was shared. Dr. Lenz provided an update on the Wild Horse and Burro program. The program budget, number of animals rounded up, adoptions have all increased. Birth control is being applied in those herds that are accessible. And there was a conversation around the disease outbreak in short-term facilities in 2022. The American Paint Horse Association provided an update regarding the new resources that they've made available at their new office. Also, that they are developing new resources for outreach at events and increasing the profile of their welfare activities and safety protocols. And they are investigating opportunities to utilize what TV outreach they already have in effect. American Association of Equine Practitioners provided an update, including the increase in their virtual roundtables and raising some awareness to their Ukraine outreach, which is continuing to this day. They made us all aware of their Vet Direct program and how that Vet Direct program is continuing to be utilized by veterinarians in communities with clients that are suffering financially. U.S. Polo is investigating and expanding their drug policies. HPBA announced the funding opportunities that they're making available for their Lameness Locator Development Fund. They also discussed the Safe Stride project and the fracture support system that they are importing from Ireland. Path International shared that they are investigating animal assessment tools to identify behavioral characteristics that can be used to determine an animal's interest and engagement in therapeutic riding programs, as well as also developing more equine welfare standards, continuing through their welfare standards committees. The Horse and Humans Foundation shared that they are looking for scientific advisor volunteers for their grant approvals, and they're also increasing their educational webinars and international outreach. Julie Broadway provided an update on the caisson platoon situation, and Dr. Lenz closed the meeting.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to the American Horse Council and share with you the premise of this project, which was recently funded by Morris Animal Foundation. I'm Dr. Chris Heine, one of the co-PIs on this grant that is focused on improving equine welfare by educating horse owners on the correct ability to recognize and interpret equine affective states. I would like to introduce the team members. Myself from Oklahoma State University, Dr. Colleen Brady from Purdue University, and Dr. Kathy Anderson from the University of Nebraska, all of which are long-term academicians and participants in the horse industry. Between the three of us, we have more than 20 peer-reviewed publications specifically addressing horse well-being or best practices in education and have presented to national and international audiences. So, why do we want to focus on affective state, or the emotional state of the animal? We know changes in an animal's behavior, which includes such subtleties as expression, posture, etc., often precedes physiological changes, such as hormones, heart rate, temperature, immune modulation, etc., and therefore can be a very useful tool in assessing well-being. Further, this is the data that horse owners have access to and is the most important to their daily lives. Finally, compared to other farm animal species where we use other types of data, horses' well-being is much more impacted by their daily interactions with humans as well as their management systems. Therefore, it's an essential part of defining, is a horse in a good state of well-being? So I wanted to talk a little bit about why I care about this topic. Certainly, I'm an advocate for the horse industry and all of the positives it brings, just besides my paycheck, and really thinking that the horse has such a unique place in society. If you ask the general member of a public about the horses, they're going to talk about horses about wild, free, proud, beautiful animals, and that's how they're often depicted in art, movies, literature, etc. I've actually discussed this very topic in presentations on horse show welfare and have given that to national organizations in several different states, so it's definitely a passion of mine. And honestly, the horse industry is under increased scrutiny. A myriad of track breakdowns, drug scandals making national news, blatant abuse going viral on social media, and more. What we as an industry need to fear is losing our social license to operate. So what is that is essentially the ongoing acceptance of the industry's standard practices by society. So I wanted to provide an example of losing the social license to operate. In 2021, Voter Initiative banned greyhound racing in Florida, and the last race of greyhound racing in Iowa took place on May 16th of 2022. Currently, there's only 2 existing tracks in West Virginia, as society has simply decided that greyhound racing is not socially acceptable. Certainly everyone loved the come-from-behind victory of Rich Strike, but just think about all of the social media outrage that occurred when he was disciplined by the outrider for biting at the pony horse. Personally, I've heard stories of dead horses at major competitions at large facilities. Even my aunt attended a barrel race and was shepherded around the other way because there was a dead horse there due to a drug overdose. If you are not familiar with social license to operate, I certainly would encourage you to read the paper by Haleski et al. That examines the thoroughbred industry's ability to continue if we actually do lose our social license to operate. We need everyone involved in the industry to be more proactive and better understand what constitutes good welfare and what does not, and make it far less socially acceptable to condone these very bad practices. I'm often struck by how naive some students are before going into the real industry and the quiet conversations I've had about the abuse they've seen that has not even been very well hidden from public view. Videos going viral and shifts in public opinion can easily change the future of the horse industry. Defining good welfare is hard, especially in the horse industry. The very diversity of it makes us almost speak different languages in what is expected as normal care and handling of the horse. All of this varies by so many different factors, but we need to strive to educate our stakeholders on what is actually true, based on the behavior and science of the animal, not on our personal beliefs. While some personal beliefs are unavoidable, we believe we have a willing to learn audience and can create some common understanding. For example, there was a recent study from Canada on the beliefs and perceptions of horse owners in equine welfare. What they found probably shouldn't surprise you. The horses that were of the most concern were not yours. If you rode Western, the English horses were more at risk, and certainly any horses that went through auctions people thought were under poor welfare. So what actions that you take that are okay are, again, whatever the things that you and the people you know do, but not the other tribe. There's very little consensus on what is truly good or bad for the horse. It's just what you happen to be accustomed to. This could also include what you've become numb to as well. So again, our goal is to allow people to interpret through a clearer lens, is the animal really okay? Many authors have studied what we are comfortable with assessing horse well-being. So if you ask, how do you assess horse welfare, the focus is usually on the easy stuff or the low-hanging fruit. Is he lame, thin, or can you see injuries? But a lot of practices can cause stress, anxiety, and depression, which ultimately impact well-being if persistent. Voigt found that among horse show competitors, most owners, again, strongly agree about physical factors, but there was less agreement on mental state or the ability to express normal behaviors, which also differed by the rider's riding discipline. Most animal welfare is actually placed on the 5 freedoms model, which has been traditionally used again for farm animal welfare and is concentrated on the avoidance of negative states, but may be a bit undefined on the expression of normal behavior. However, a more appropriate model, especially in horses where their mental state very directly affects their performance potential, as well as humans' ability to safely interact with them, is the 5 domains model of assessing animal well-being. Here, rather than just identifying the ability to express normal behavior, a 5th domain, the mental domain, is part of all of the physical or functional domains. It considers the affective or emotional state of the animal and promotes the idea of positive welfare. It asks not only is the animal simply surviving, but are they thriving? And again, in a species where the human-animal dyad and its relationship is key, this part of the equation is necessary. Indeed, Lofgren et al. In 2022 found that taking a more positive approach to equine welfare and identifying what is good in welfare systems, rather than focusing on the negative and often more controversial aspects of equine welfare, has a greater potential to create buy-in from industry partners who may actually fear instruction in the what is wrong approach. So where are we on assessing equine emotion? We know that the majority of the population, even in horse owners, consider horses as companion animals and encouragingly recognize that horses can feel pain, fear, and boredom. However, we do see a bit more lack of agreement on the other emotions. Lofgren et al. Found that riding discipline again highly influenced what was considered good welfare, such as the ability to express natural behaviors. We also know from the work of Wires et al. That even equine experts have relatively a hard time defining and identifying fear, stress, or reactivity in horses. Misidentification of these states and using the wrong training or handling principles could lead to very adverse consequences in the horse. We need to teach horse owners and handlers how to critically analyze what they're seeing and not just really rely on what they think or our human misperceptions. We also know that just giving new information isn't going to change people's perceptions and practices. This information needs to be delivered in a way that causes people to re-examine what they've been doing. Existing research on horse behavior and well-being will of course inform the content of our project, but we know delivery is key, and that's where we are uniquely qualified. In the studies that have indicated that horse owners and handlers have difficulty identifying factors relative to equine affective states, the common answer in the discussion is always education. We need to provide education. However, we know that simply handing out the facts does not work. Knowledge does not always alter behavior. Stakeholders must also have the motivation to learn, the capability of learning, as well as the opportunity. All of these factors work together to create an individual that is willing to change their mindset and therefore their practices. Scientists and researchers may feel very good about presenting information at our various professional meetings, standing by our cleverly constructed posters, or publishing papers for that oh so very important promotion package. However, this information very rarely makes it to the average horse owner or those that interact with horses. Therefore, again, we need to be able to transmit this information in a way that is easily consumable to the horse owner. So how are we qualified to undertake this endeavor? Between the three PIs, we unfortunately have 70 years of experience educating students and horse owners. All three PIs have worked very closely together in the nationwide community of practice, Extension Horses Incorporated, which is a professional organization of equine extension specialists both at the state and county level. Our broad reach has allowed us to create partnerships with all facets of the equine industry, bridging that tribe mentality. In our organization, as well as within the three PIs, we all have a diversity of background in disciplines, breeds, and level of involvement in the horse industry, which is needed to bring legitimacy to this project. Our goal, therefore, is to use our expertise in educational online programming to increase the awareness of and the ability to correctly interpret equine affective states. To develop empathy, as a greater degree of empathy discourages moral disengagement, and recognize when our practices are negatively affecting the horse, thereby to create true cognitive change, or essentially how we think about the horse. Borrowing from the social sciences, we intend to use the theory of planned behavior change, where to ultimately improve horse welfare, we need to increase the knowledge in our stakeholders through providing unique educational opportunities in an online curriculum, whereby we will increase the willingness and the confidence in horse owners to use the affective state of the horse in interpreting their management and handling practices. This creates the opportunity for owners to change their behavior and mindset, the ultimate goal of the project. Thus, we are creating RAISE, or Recognizing Affective States in Equine, a novel, interactive, online educational curriculum based on proven practices of social scientists. We'll be using Keller's ARCS model, which combines principles of motivational concept and theories to optimize learning. A, it needs to attract and retain the attention of the learner. R, it needs to be relevant to their daily lives. C, we need to increase their confidence in the ability to recognize affective states in horses. And S, we will be providing a high degree of user satisfaction. Now, obviously, there was a big shift to online learning due to the pandemic, but this shift to online and open access to learning to all age groups has been an increasing trend. Current technology has shifted just beyond recorded lectures to focus on best practices to engage the learner and ultimately create higher-level thinking. This centers around active instruction and student-centered learning, which has been shown to be highly effective. Further, the main demographic of horse owners has a high degree of self-efficacy in the use of technology. Again, we'll be using these techniques to create a truly innovative project. I'll go into more detail shortly about the execution of the intervention and its assessment, but a key tool which we will be using is allowing our users to reflect on what they see with qualitative behavior assessment. This is a useful tool that expands beyond physiological measures to examine how individuals describe the subjective emotional experience of the animal. This is the most practical approach for owners and handlers, as it's simply not possible to, again, get those physiological measures we talked about earlier. So instead, we're going to focus on body movement, postures, presence of stereotypies, etc. in our behavior assessment. With QBA, words are actually plotted by their intensity on the y-axis, or essentially what is the state of the arousal of the animal, and then we plot the words with the relative goodness or badness of the emotion on the x-axis. The plotting of these words then allows us to compare between groups and, for our purposes, to compare between our educational intervention. For example, this is a project done by Kirkland et al. At Oklahoma State University. She was comparing the QBA between undergraduates which differed by their self-reported equine experience. They were shown 20 different images of horses with and without human interaction, and then asked to provide word descriptors of the affective state of the horse in the image. In this example, you can see the wide variance in how students saw the relative goodness or badness of the animal's emotional state, as well as the difference in the intensity of the emotions. So in this example, the blue dots were our inexperienced group and red were experienced, and even within experienced groups, what they were seeing in this image varied quite widely, which is again the need for this educational intervention. So now let's talk a little bit about what RAISE is all about. So what is included in RAISE? Modules will be built with up-to-date content backed by research, but framed always in Keller's ARCS model for motivation. We'll have modules on the uniqueness of the senses of the horse and how the world they perceive may differ from ours, the common behaviors expressed by the horse in various affective states, and how the user can interpret horse communication in all of the ways expressions, body postures, and actions a horse non-verbally communicates their affective state. Further, this online curriculum, which is going to be highly accessible, is designed to be interactive, allowing the user to move between topics, answer questions, and receive feedback, thereby creating confidence, the C in the ARCS model, as well as view behaviors and scenarios pulled from real-life scenarios. Remember the R? This ensures that the learner will find the material relevant, gain confidence in their abilities, and be highly satisfied in the quality of the curriculum. While some of the images just pulled in these examples demonstrate more negative affective states, for every negative emotive state, we will also emphasize positive states. As stated by Lofgren, it is essential to create a positive approach to equine welfare. Recognizing the good not only creates industry buy-in, but provides owners more confidence in creating the correct or good state of well-being for their horse. Again, we'll have lots of different modules that will allow users to put it all together and describe all of the various pieces and parts of the horse that they are observing to describe their affective state, and provide examples of oral and locomotor stereotypies which can accompany those negative welfare conditions that we're trying to educate owners to avoid as well. So while this is not the finished project at this point in time, this kind of just shows some illustrations of how users may click through the various pieces and parts of the curriculum, how we'll focus on specific behaviors that the horse may exhibit. And again, the stereotypies piece will be only part of this online material, and a lot of it focused on overall scenarios and well-being of the animal. The project itself is divided in stages, with the first stage consisting of a smaller group of users to pilot RAISE. We're going to test its effectiveness by using pre-post tests of users' ability to assess equine affective states and then quantify the degree of improvement. Again, we'll be doing that using our qualitative behavioral assessment and plotting the response of the users. We'll also do focal sampling via interviews to gain greater insight into the effectiveness or the potential lack thereof of the modules, and again, frame all of the user satisfaction. This will provide the basis for any needed modifications or reviews prior to the second phase. After completing any necessary revisions, we will then broadcast the availability of the tool to a larger audience and ask users to participate in equine welfare evaluations, similar to collegiate animal welfare judging competitions. Users will be asked to complete evaluations both before and after receiving the intervention. We'll also compare the results to a group of waitlisted controls that have expressed interest in completing the online training. Again, then we'll be able to assess between groups that may just be interested in horses compared to those that actually have gone through the training. Ultimately, then, we will assess whether the affective state of the horse was considered in their assessment of horse well-being. Finally, in Phase 3, we'll follow up with a 3-month assessment in order to determine if users have indeed changed any of their behavior relative to the management and handling with the horses, or if they intend to change their behavior. We will also be making all curriculum available to our various partner organizations of extension horses, as well as our 3 member universities, to distribute this intervention as widely as possible. Due to the broad reach of industry partnerships and utilization of social media, it's anticipated that distribution of this educational tool could be substantial. It could be used for youth education, undergraduate and veterinary courses, as well as public dissemination. As the PI's industry contacts reach across breed and riding disciplines, it's expected that a large swath of the horse industry could be impacted. This could potentially benefit thousands of horses due to the ability of owners to assess their welfare state more accurately and holistically. The horse industry will benefit as improved care and well-being of horses reflects well on the industry as a whole and will play a role in addressing current issues and concerns around social license to operate. So I want to thank the American Horse Council for inviting me to speak to you all today. I've put my contact information below with my email and phone number. And again, if you have any questions about the project, we'd be more than happy to address those. So thanks again.
Equifair really takes a different approach to product development and to the materials that we use in our products. We're always looking outside to see what the sports world and medical worlds are doing, and we apply that to the equine athlete. We love horses, so that's just what really fuels us to do what we do.
The American Horse Council's Show and Competition Committee met on Tuesday, June the 7th. This committee is chaired by Dr. Billy Smith of the American Paint Horse Association. In attendance were a number of the committee members who represent a wide variety of organizations. The charter of this committee is to monitor issues that may impact the viability of horse shows and competitions and public perception of horses and riders engaged in competition. Topics may include, but are not limited to, rider safety, immigration, horse transport, horse welfare. In addition, this committee identifies and prioritizes concerns and opportunities, evaluates related information, and determines actions or activities that may be appropriate to recommend to the AHC Board of Trustees. Dr. Smith kicked off the meeting by welcoming everyone and doing some brief introductions. Under old business, the committee heard a report from the Director of Health and Regulatory Affairs, Cliff Williamson, on CAFO regulations and how those are impacting show facilities. You can learn more about this on the AHC website. He also provided an update on the Horse Protection Act and the Prevent All Soaring Tactic Act. Again, you can read all about that. Under new business, we had quite a robust panel discussion on proposed amateur rule changes that are being discussed throughout the industry. Specifically, we heard from Bill Maroney at the United States Equestrian Federation, which is a little farther along on the process than some other groups are, and he shared with us some of the rule changes that they are considering and some they have already implemented. The Certified Horsemanship Association Executive Director, Christy Landwehr, also shared some work she'd been doing in this regard, as did Dr. Smith from the American Paint Horse Association, and Ward Stutz spoke on behalf of the American Quarter Horse Association. All those organizations are considering amateur rule changes to open up the amateur ranks and allow amateurs to be more engaged in the industry, specifically by being able to teach beginning lessons while maintaining their amateur status. There are a number of other aspects to this, but it's a really great dialogue, and the American Horse Council's Show and Competition Committee has recommended that the AHC put out a resolution and a statement to encourage the industry to embrace this kind of change. Look for that very soon. We also had a conversation around event closings due to land use and zoning changes. We've heard quite a bit about that in the last few years, but what was discovered as we began this conversation is that while we are seeing some smaller venues close, we are seeing larger venues pop up and some of the existing ones expand. So we're really excited about some of those changes. But we continue to work closely with the AHC Recreation Trails and Land Use Committee on land use and zoning issues. Most land use and zoning issues really start at the local level. So it's important that people in our industry meet with their planning commissions and really stay attuned to what might be coming. We also briefly discussed some transitions we are seeing in the industry with retiring show managers and show staff, etc., stewards and others, and how we ensure that we have a good pipeline for these kinds of positions. So that was a lot of good dialogue about how we sort of prop up some of these professional opportunities that are appearing. I gave a presentation, very short presentation, encouraging everyone to consider implementing safe sport rules. Safe sport came into being a number of years ago with a piece of federal legislation, and we have seen that take effect at the national governing bodies, in our case, the United States Equestrian Federation. But we really want to have a standard of care that people can rely on when they want to get into the equestrian industry, and safe sport sort of sets that bar. And so we are very much encouraging people to consider that. AHC put out a statement of support for safe sport several years ago, and that is on our website also. We also discussed diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives. The AHC has a DEI task force, which pulls together people from all across the industry to talk about how we can move diversity and equality and inclusion into our industry. It's really important if we want to bring new people into our space that they feel welcome and they can identify themselves in some of the things that we do. So we have really been spotlighting a number of organizations around the country that are from underrepresented communities and bringing people in, and we're really excited about that. The task force at AHC built a DEI business case document, which we have shared with our membership. If you're interested in seeing that, by all means, reach out to me. That was the extent of our show and competition committee meeting. We did go into closed session to just see if there was any real specific recommendations that we wanted to pass to the Board of Trustees, and there were none submitted.
The American Horse Council's Health and Regulatory Committee had a well-attended meeting on Tuesday, June 7th. The meeting opened with introductions by Dave Foley, the chair. That was followed by legislative and regulatory updates provided by myself, Cliff Williamson. Those updates included an announcement regarding the FDA's antimicrobial public comment request. We discussed the impacts antimicrobials are having, the concerns that medication-resistant bacteria may pose on both horses and humans in our industry. That said, the AVMA is continuing to put together comments for the FDA's sake, and we decided that the American Horse Council should request an extension to allow the AVMA to put those comments together. Following that, we discussed the USDA's interest in soliciting comments for the World Organization on Animal Health, or WOA. Those comments, those chapters that WOA maintains, touch on a variety of things. This year in particular, three specific diseases which carry significance for the equine industry. we decided that we should put together a working group within the American Horse Council to provide comments not only for the USDA's benefit, but also for the World Organization on Animal Health, or WOA. Following those legislative and regulatory updates, we had organizational updates provided by our committee members, starting with an update from the Equine Disease Communication Center. A major point of notice was that the EDCC has received a $176,000 cooperative agreement from the USDA, and then they also received a significant grant in an effort to identify permanent revenue structure for the EDCC so that fundraising will not be such a primary concern and source of effort on behalf of EDCC staff. There's also discussions around the EDCC hiring a new part-time veterinarian to direct and supervise the program itself. We were also provided an update regarding AVMA's model rabies statement and the process to add horses to that model statement. As we understand it, it is under approval within the AVMA at this time and is moving through their committee structure. We were provided a few comments on the state of U.S. Animal Health Association's Committee on Equine. There was a major note regarding the 25 new state veterinarians nationwide. Very few of them have an equine background, and so a request was made that organizations within each of those states make an effort to reach out to those state veterinarians to help provide them the resources they need to adequately regulate our industry. There were several conversations surrounding the staffing shortages that the USDA is continuing to experience and the impacts those staffing shortages are having on our industry. Most significantly, the impact on disease traceability and noticeable financial impacts of the lack of staff and our ability to move animals into and out of the United States. We received a report on EIA and EP concerns. Those issues continue, and both the illegal transport of horses into the United States across our southern borders, and also the proliferation of iatrogenic transfer of equine infectious anemia and equine piroplasmosis within the unsanctioned quarter horse racing communities. There's an announcement that USAHA has new equine herpes virus guidelines under review, and that the USDA's discussion group on import guidelines has wrapped. The U.S. Equestrian Federation provided details on the new potential protocols that will standardize outbreak responses at USEF events regardless of the states that they're in. As many states have different protocols, the USEF is looking into how they can standardize it at an event level. AAP shared that best practices of international travel document has been finalized and released to the USDA for internal usage and guidance directly in line with the discussion group that was mentioned earlier. They also announced that new health sheets have been released by the AAEP on several new diseases, and they can be found on their website.
The American Horse Council Racing Advisory Committee met on Tuesday, June the 7th. This committee is chaired by Tom Rooney of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association and includes a number of members across the industry: AAEP, the National HPBA, the Association of Racing Commissioners International, the Florida Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders, Maryland Thoroughbred Horsemen, Thoroughbred Racing Association, and the American Quarter Horse Association. So those are just a few. There's a lot. This is a big committee. This committee The chairman kicked it off and welcomed everyone and provided a few opening remarks, and we approved the minutes from their last meeting. We had a guest presenter for this meeting, which was Lisa Lazarus. Lisa is the CEO for the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, and she's responsible for the implementation of racetrack safety programs and the authority's anti-doping and medication control, called ADMC. She's responsible for that program, which is launching in January of 2023. She works with all the stakeholders in the industry to evaluate and improve methodologies and rulemaking to optimize these programs' impact to ensure welfare and integrity in horse racing. Lisa has a distinguished career before joining the organization. She was a partner at Morgan Sports Law, where she founded and led equestrian practice across a range of anti-doping, disciplinary, and regulatory disputes before the International Equestrian Federation, the FEI Tribunal, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and other governing bodies. She's been involved in equestrian sports, and she spent 10 years at the National Football League serving as their labor relations counsel. And so she's got well positioned to handle this opportunity. So she talked to us about some of the practices and policies that are being rolled out by this new authority. And she engaged in a dialogue with the members during the Q&A session of this. After hearing Lisa's presentation, the committee then moved on to hear Eric Hamelback of National HPBA give an update on our progress related to H-2B and H-2A worker visas. As you can imagine, this industry does rely a lot on foreign workers, and H-2A and H-2B are our primary vehicles to obtain those kinds of workers, and there's never enough visas to go around, so that's been the challenge that we have been working on. We also heard an update on the Equine Tax Fairness Act. In November of 21, Congressman Andy Barr from Kentucky reintroduced legislation to incentivize the investment in Kentucky's signature equine industry. That's H.R. 5833, called the Equine Tax Fairness Act, which would make 3-year depreciation schedules permanent for racehorses. Now, currently, Congress must reauthorize this provision in the tax law on a year-to-year annual basis. And H.R. 5833 has been referred to the House Committee on Ways and Means, where it is waiting consideration. This language in this legislation would reduce the holding period for equine assets to be considered long-term capital gains, putting them on a level playing field with other similar assets. This particular piece of legislation has been endorsed by the National Thoroughbred Racing Association, the Kentucky Thoroughbred Association, the Jockey Club, the Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders Association, Keeneland, and the American Horse Council. So we are all very much advocating to see if we can move this along. Those were the primary topics that the committee considered. They did go into closed session. There were no action items that came from that to go to the AHC Board of Trustees.
This is Karen, and this is her land. She's been here a long time, along with Mojo. The first fence post went up here. Now there's 5,000 of them. After the storm, she started the cleanup here. And when she needs some peace and quiet, she always finds it right here. This is more than just land, it's home. Karen runs with us on a John Deere 3E Series tractor, because who says a day's work has to take all day? Nothing runs like a Deere. Search John Deere 3E Series for more.
We hoped you enjoyed and found it informative to hear some of the work of AHC's standing committees. We especially hoped you enjoyed the presentation by Dr. Henney of Oklahoma State University, which we played in full as part of the Equine Welfare Committee. Next, I'd like to go over the lineup of guest speakers that we had for the National Issues Forum on Monday, June the 6th. Each year at the AHC annual conference, we focus one day as the National Issues Forum. We bring in not only speakers from within our industry, but external speakers to give us perspective on things that are going on in the greater community and perhaps in other sectors that we might want to learn more about and possibly see if we would like to replicate. So with that, we began the day with a state of the industry and a state of the American Horse Council. In a minute, you'll hear both of those presentations in full. The state of the industry was provided by our board chair, Dr. Rick Mitchell, and the state of the American Horse Council was provided by myself. So I hope you'll find those very informative. Next, we had a wonderful guest speaker, Margaret Reynolds. Margaret is an organizational growth strategist. She's the author of a book called Reignite, and she was here to talk with us a little bit about some of the things that we as an industry might want to do to continue our upward trajectory and the positive things that we benefited from as we have navigated the last few years. You're going to hear a little outtake of Margaret's presentation. Following that, we had a really great panel discussion, and the topic was shared services and those models. This is quite popular in some other industries where they have come together to create an entity, an organization to provide overhead services to everyone, where we're leveraging that knowledge and that insight into the industry in order to more rapidly and at a cheaper rate, so economies of scale there, to accomplish some of the things we'd like to accomplish. We had Clay Zellwing from the National Swine Registry, who has done just that for the swine community. We heard from Kristen Bennett. Kristen is the CEO of Nonprofit Resources, LLC. They are an association management company who provides those types of resources. And we also heard from Harold Palmer, who heads up the Jockey Club Technology Services. They provide technology services to a number of different organizations across the equine sector, including the American Horse Council, the American Quarter Horse Association, and the National Reining Horse Association, to name just a few. So we're going to give you a little outtake of that panel discussion. So we're going to whet your appetite, we hope, a little bit there. Following lunch, we had Keith Roberts with us. Keith is an author, and he is of the Oak Journal. That's the name of the book that he published. And his presentation was called Level Up Your Life, and we're happy to share that with you. It's a very informative and I think very aspirational presentation to help us all prioritize the things that are important that we want to focus on. Following Keith, we had Jennifer Lerner. Jennifer is with the Aspen Institute's Sports and Society program, and she shared with us some recent statistics that they had collected on youth sports and youth engagement throughout the pandemic and what that might mean to us as an industry and how we might leverage some of these results to further draw youth into the equestrian space. Following that, we had another panel discussion. This time the topic was horse sales trends. And the reason for this panel was we have heard sort of anecdotally across the entire space that horse sales prices, average prices for horses, are up and that horses are selling quickly. Things are moving. So we said, well, let's get some concrete numbers here. So kicking this off was Craig Huffines from the Equine Science program at Colorado State University to talk about their ranch horse program and sale. We had Tiana Creamer, who is with the Heart of Phoenix Rescue Facility and the Appalachian Trainer Challenge. Tiana's dealing with horses that are being retrained and repurposed for new opportunities and a sale that's associated with that. And Mike Jennings from Professional Horse Sales Services. He and his wife do online sales as well as some live auction sales. And he's got some great data to share with us from some of his recent events. So you're going to hear some more about that. After our afternoon break, we came back and Julie Firshman, who is an equine attorney, talked to the organizations about equine liability laws. Equine liability laws are very important and they vary from state to state. So it's important that everyone understand what you need to do as far as liability is concerned. And some of that has to do with signage and some of it has to do with waivers. And she was very informative. So you're going to hear a little bit about that. Following Julie was Janet Kane Patterson, who's the Chief Scientific Officer at the Morris Animal Foundation. Janet couldn't be with us in person, so she pre-recorded her presentation. So we're going to play that one in full for you so you can hear her talk about the importance of research and some of the research that Morris Animal Foundation is currently funding. It's very fascinating. And last, but certainly not least, our final presenter was Charlene Couch. Charlene is with the Livestock Conservancy, who is dedicated to ensuring that we have genetic materials for rare breeds or breeds that have reduced in numbers to the point that they are threatened for extinction. So her topic was preserving equine genetics and tools to help do that. So enjoy what recordings that we're providing, and if you have any questions about any of that content, feel free to follow up with us.
When Julie asked me to speak for a moment, I was a little taken back by, what are we going to do? But, looking back as a veterinarian, I think I can comment pretty accurately on how our industry has been for the past couple of years. I'm an Oklahoma State graduate of the College of Veterinary Medicine. Right after I graduated, I spent 2 years on active duty in the military. Then entered private practice. When I entered private practice, it was everything. Donkeys, burros, miniature horses, show horses, whatever. But as my practice life evolved, I became more and more involved with the world that I knew from my younger life, the sport horse world, the show jumpers and dressage horses. And I had the good fortune to get involved with some very great trainers in the New England area, and ultimately got involved with the U.S. Equestrian Team and the U.S. Equestrian Federation. And I served as attending veterinarian to the USET for 6 Olympic Games. So I've had the opportunity to see a lot of different aspects of the horse world. I also, my ex-wife and I, owned Appaloosas, so a little divergence there. And I had the opportunity to train and ride a world champion English Pleasure Appaloosa and a national champion Appaloosa English Pleasure. So I feel like I've got somewhat of a well-rounded background. I tried the racetrack for a little while and realized that my real love was the show horse, although I had great admiration for the American Thoroughbred, just a phenomenal animal. And so, and in the early days of horse showing, of course, most of our really good hunters were, in fact, thoroughbreds, and many of them had come off the racetrack. So we move on to today, and 2 years ago, our industry was really dealt a big blow. I have spent the last 40 years working half the year in South Florida, basically Palm Beach, a little Ocala, but mostly Palm Beach. The rest of the year based out of New England. And in March of 2020, everything shut down. Boom, gone, no horse shows. And we all kind of stood around and looked at one another and said, what are we going to do? And April was slow. It was the slowest month of veterinary work I had ever had in my entire career that we could track. And much of my rest of my practice was that way. And then suddenly things started evolving. And this is the great thing about our industry. We had great reflexes. The industry was nimble and responsive to what was going on. And people started looking, what else can we do? We're at home, we're with our horses. And suddenly July was one of the biggest months in our veterinary practice we had ever had, because all of a sudden they realized, whoa, wait a minute, I've got these issues. Well, I need to take care of this. Well, maybe I'm going to breed this one, or maybe people started looking around and trying to find other things to do while they weren't actually going to horse shows, and they were paying a little bit more attention to maybe some of the things that they should have done when they were too busy chasing points and glory. And so, as a result, I think we got much more into networking. The horsemen were looking for creative solutions. And one of the things that started to happen in late 2020 was horse sales started really picking up. And we found that we went from doing virtually no purchase examinations to having to really strictly schedule ourselves so that we could get them all done. And there was then more influence on teaching young people to ride, and older people for that matter, and there was a strong positive demand for riding lessons. As 2021 came on, we saw the biggest group of entries in the Palm Beach Winter Equestrian Festival we'd ever seen. Suddenly everybody was back in horse showing, and despite the fact that everyone was wearing a mask at the end gate, we were still really ramping up and getting back into the idea of horse showing and competition. The industry got a little more business-minded and took advantage of the resurgence in outdoor recreation, and we brought our A game back to getting people back into riding. There were record numbers of participants on trails and in outdoor activities with horses. Registrations for various breeds have increased in 2021 and 2022. Interestingly enough, quarter horse registry is up, paint horse registry is up, and several others. And I think one of the great civic-minded things is the fact that there has been in the last 2 years a tremendous interest in therapeutic riding and equine-assisted services. And I see this all over the country. I've been very involved with various therapeutic riding groups and donating and helping horses get donated, and I'm seeing these services continuing to grow and flourish. And the industry reflected on how we need to address issues like animal welfare, diversity, equality, and inclusion. We never talked about diversity in the equine industry before, but it really is something that we needed to look at, and I'm glad we've done that. We've matured that way. And then I think we've become a bit more community-minded as an industry, rather than being a little, perhaps, egocentric horse people. We've become a lot more community-minded, I think, in general, with how we treat the rest of the population. And that reflects well on us and is going to continue to improve our image and the interest in the horse world in general. I think we all know we're here because we love horses. We're all here because we know how to treat horses properly. And what we need to do is to convey to the rest of the population that this is a sport and an industry that has brought America to where it is. And we want to see it preserved. So thank you, and thank all of you for being here.
To say that my staff may be small, but they are mighty. They got a lot done during the course of the pandemic, and I wanted to hit some of the highlights from last year. We accomplished 25 pieces of legislative and regulatory issues, which is just a banner year. I mean, you would think during the course of the pandemic things would slow down, but they just kept picking up, and we just kept responding. Because we couldn't be in person, we pivoted and did 30 educational sessions. We pre-recorded a lot of content, sent it to some of you that did have conferences, and just tried to get out as much information as we possibly could. If you heard Ashley Harkins' presentation yesterday about the United Horse Coalition, they built a COVID resource database, and when we built that and started talking about it, hits on that website just went through the roof. Over 12,000 hits on that equine resource database. So that told us right away that we were really onto something, that people were at home looking for ways, as Dr. Mitchell said, to get out and be engaged, and they needed resources to do that and suggestions. So there was tons of things we did there. We built a diversity, equality, and inclusion business case. We formed a DEI task force, and if you're out there, raise your hand. You're on the task force. There's a couple of them in here. And we tried our best to collaborate as an industry and say, what is each organization doing in that particular space of DEI, and how do we help one another and not recreate the wheel? What was your experience, and how can we apply that? And then we built a business case to try to encourage the industry to do even more. We continued to focus as an organization on governance. And that meant we wanted to have more perspectives at the table. And I would like to introduce Austin. Where's Austin? Stand up back there, Austin. Austin is our newest at-large member. And you can see he's a bit younger than the rest of our trustees. And he is our new young adult representative, and he's going to bring that fresh perspective. But I also want to shout out to two new trustees that joined us this year. Christy Landwehr is out there. She is a new at-large person. And Justine Staten is a new at-large representing the Coalition of State Horse Councils. So we're really excited about that. We really expanded our network of ambassadors and our subject matter experts by forming a lot of different kinds of task force this past year. So some of you have participated on the Horse Camp Task Force or the CAFO Task Force. And we did, as I said, DEI. We have a youth engagement task force. So as I look around this room, I see a lot of faces that are participating in all those areas. We undertook a new strategic planning exercise. We were slated to do it when the pandemic hit, and we put it off a little bit, and then decided as the pandemic was starting to, we hopefully recover a little bit. We went through a new strategic plan, and Kristen Bennett is out there, and you're going to meet Kristen in just a little bit. She facilitated that session, and I'm really pleased that we have a new mission statement, and it's short and concise. The mission of the American Horse Council is to protect and strengthen America's horse industry. That's what our job is, okay? That's what we're doing. We're in the process right now of working through the rest of the strategic plan. There are a lot of action items that came out of that, so we're trying to figure out how to prioritize those and get those done. Later today, you are going to see a sizzle reel. Where's Dave Andrick? Is he out there from Equine Network? The Marketing Alliance underwent a new strategic plan also, and one of the things they wanted to do was roll out a new ad campaign, and Equine Network has developed what is called a sizzle reel. It's like a PSA, and I'm going to preview that for you this afternoon and get your feedback on it. So we're really excited about that, so you'll get a taste for that. And I could not miss this opportunity to repeat again and again. In 2023, we're going to do a new national economic impact study. If you're familiar with that body of work, it's one of the most useful things that we have, not only when we go up on the Hill and we meet with legislators to talk about the impact of our industry, but I have a lot of states that have used that data in helping them with a variety of different things that they're encountering in their state at the state or local level. So we're really excited about that. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Does anybody have a burning question you want to ask me about the American Horse Council? I will say, if he's out there somewhere, I'm going to ask him to stand real quick. Cliff Williamson is our Director of Health and Regulatory Affairs. I don't know if I see him. Ashley Harkins is our Director of the United Horse Coalition, and Emily Stearns is responsible for our Equine Welfare Data Collective. And right before the conference, we had our government affairs liaison tell us that he was departing. So if you know somebody who's a good lobbyist, point them in my direction, because I'm going to be hiring someone.